Hello everyone, I am going to use this PowerPoint to talk about what your first project will be at A-Level Fine Art. Okay, so we're going to go through it. I've got some examples. We're going to talk about the assessment and how you can really get the most out of your course, as well as putting the most into your projects as well. So let's get started. So the A-Level Fine Art is set out like this. You have 5-hour long formal lessons of art each week within the department, and that'll be generally split up with 3 single hours and 1 double lesson where you have 2 hours back to back. You will be expected to complete a good amount of coursework each week. This must not only be completed within the lessons, but also done in your own time. And you can do this by using your study periods, obviously using your time at home, okay, as well as using those 5 hours that you get timetabled each week. The way that it's graded is the same as GCSE Art. So those of you who have done GCSE Fine Art, you will know how it's set out and how it's marked. However, if you haven't, it's just to let you know that your studies are 60% of the grades is based on coursework and 40% of the grade is set by an external exam. Okay, so this is the same way as GCSE, 60% on coursework and 40% on the external exam. Just to give you a little bit of clarity on what the exam is, you get the exam question in January of year 13. And what happens is you have a set amount of time, generally a couple of months, to do a portfolio based on the topic that you choose. And then you have your 15-hour exam where you sit in the department and you are off timetable for 3 days to get your final outcome completed. Okay, so the first project that we're going to undertake in A-Level Fine Art will be portraits in the figure. So I'm going to speak to you a little bit about assessment, and then I'm going to go back and show you a video of portraits in the figure, and then I'll have a little bit of a discussion about what is expected of you going forward. The way that you're marked at A-Level Fine Art is very similar in the way that you are marked at GCSE Fine Art. So we use the AQA structure, so we use their assessment objectives and their assessment criteria, and that is who you get your overall qualification from. It'll be from AQA. So it is broken down very, very similarly to the GCSE. You've got your assessment objective 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then each of those are marked out of 24. The boundaries are slightly different in terms of grading and where you sit, but in terms of the assessment objectives, if you have done GCSE Fine Art, you should be really quite familiar with this now. But I will just go through it with you just so that you understand what it is that's expected, what you're marked against, and how obviously it will work in terms of building up those marks in your coursework to secure a grade at A-level. Assessment objective 1 then is to develop ideas through sustained and focused investigations informed by contextual or other sources, demonstrating analytical and critical understanding. So the kind of keywords that we need to take from that is development, investigating, your artist research comes into that, your annotation comes into that, exploring different kinds of ways that portraits in the figure can be shown. So whether that be through different paintings or different materials or through sculpture and things like that. And then it's how you explain your ideas and obviously write about that and kind of show where your critical understanding's coming from. So assessment objective 2 is to explore and select appropriate resources, medias, materials, techniques and processes, reviewing and refining ideas as work develops. So the keywords with that then are refinement. And what we mean by that is, even if something doesn't go right the first time, how do you act on that and how do you improve, learning from any misconceptions or mistakes that you've made? That's a really good one. Or just actually being able to explore materials that you might not have ever used before and how you can get better with those over time. Experimentation, again, kind of goes back into what I've just said about how you can use different materials and how you can kind of experiment with different things to see what best suits you. How you select resources and how you select materials and how that's relevant to your thought process and your development, whether that, you know, if you're looking at an artist that uses a specific material, will you use that material or will you try and see if you can do their work in a different way with a different material? your photographs, which are your primary and your primary sources, and your ideas and how you can kind of move on and kind of explain, not just written, but also visually, what you're intended to do within the project. Assessment objective 3 is to record ideas, observations and insights relevant to intentions, reflecting critically on work and progress. So again, we're going to go back to some keywords here. So we're going to use the word record, okay? So record is how you obviously present something. So, you know, have you done observational drawings? Have you got your annotation in there to make sure that it is clear what you're learning from doing these things? Have you planned it well? Is it clear that there's a development happening from the start to the finish? Or is everything relevant? Do you have your primary sources that really do reflect that? How have you managed to do that? Assessment objective 4 then, this is the last one, which is to present a personal and meaningful response that realises intentions and, where appropriate, makes connections between visual and other elements. So this bit is kind of the keywords for this. We're looking at response, meaningful, demonstrate, understanding, connection and conclusion. They're the keywords that are really quite prominent with this. So your AO4 then is how you conclude your project. Is it clear from the beginning of your project to the end of your project that this intention was going to come out of your whole research? This final intention, which is your final piece. Okay, now we'll talk about that a little bit more a couple of slides down, because I've got an example to show you next, and I want to go through that, and then I will talk to you about how AO4 can, you know, really make the connections throughout your whole project and really be a solid conclusion of your project. It's not kind of just picked from thin air. There has to be a development through there. And again, just so you know, you've got your 24 marks. So I've put the exceptional on there because that is what we're expecting from you. With you being A-level students, we're expecting you to be up into that bracket, or at least near enough to that bracket. That would be great. So the reason why I've put that on there is just so that you can see what it is that you expect, or what AQA, I should say, expect to have from you. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to talk you through a completed A-star project of Portraits in the Figure, which will be the first project that you do at A-level Fine Art. So the first page, as it's all set out very similar to GCSE, those of you who have done it before, your first page is always your title page, which will have Portraits in the Figure, and it introduces you to your topic. The next page, you've got Portraits in the Figure in a spider diagram, and with this you think of words that relate to the topic, and then you start to branch off with different ideas, and this really helps you to think about where you could go with this. Once you've done that, you'll then go on to do your statement of intent, and your statement of intent is a statement that explains what you were going to do for your project, what artists you'll look at, and what kind of materials you're going to look at as well. Then on your next page, you start to look at a mood board, and a mood board, for those of you who haven't done one before, is a collection of images and different kind of words and things that are associated with the project that you're doing, and in this one it is Portraits in the Figure. So this student here has done their own drawings in here and also found secondary sources and primary sources that relate to what they're looking at. Okay, they also have a little look at different palettes and different kind of shading techniques of what you could do to create an interesting project going forward. So after you've done all of that, that's your introduction and kind of your thought processes behind the project. Once you've done that, you're then going to go on to talk about your artist research. So you will find artists that are relevant to your topic and what it is that you're wanting to do in terms of your final outcomes and kind of how you want to explore different types of artists that use portraits in the figure. So this student used Nathan Ford. You don't have to use this artist. There is many artists that do portrait in the figure, but you can see there is quite a lot of text about the artist. This is about a little bit of a biography, like about what the artist does and where they've come from, and then the rest of the annotation in this needs to be what you like about the work, how this relates to what you're going to do, and how you're going to explore this artist in relation to your work. So this student here has also talked about what was being successful in their own pastiche work. Pastiche work is a copy of the artist's work, so this here is what the student has done, whereas these are images of the artist's work. So you can see that she's starting to understand how to use the colour palettes and also the kind of way that this artist draws their work and paints their work to create and understand the way that they work. Once she's done that, she's then got her own primary sources, which are sources that they have taken themselves, not ones found off the internet, and she starts to sketch out her own drawings based on the artist and her primary sources. And then what she does is she develops it further to show how she has made one of her primary sources into the style of the artist's work, and this is what we call in the style of. There is a lot of annotation through here explaining her processes and also what she thought was good and could potentially be improved. Then she looks at another artist, and again she follows the same pattern, looking at the artist information, doing some pastiche work, which again is a copy of the artist's work, and then starting to, use her own images again to develop her own drawings in the style of the artist. And this one was Mark Powell. And finally she does one more. So all in all you need 3 artist research pages, double pages for this project, and this is the last one that she looks at. So you can see in this one it's a little bit different how they all kind of relate. This one is a colour artist, the one previously was a biro artist, and the one before that was a paint artist. Okay, so again she follows the same kind of pattern through this and starts to create her own versions of the artist's work in the style of, with her own primary and secondary sources. This student was lucky enough to go on a trip to Amsterdam, so they've put that in there, saying what they've learned from that in terms of portraits and the figure. They went to the Van Gogh Museum, she's got her floor pans in there, she's got little memorabilia from the trip, and also images, and just a little bit more about how she's looked at artist work outside of the school environment. And again, this is another one here where she went to the Rijksmuseum, and again she does a similar thing, and she actually creates a pastiche work based on one of the artists that you've seen there. Now, after you've done your artist research, and if you're lucky enough to do your gallery visits, once you've got that in there, you then need to start looking at observational drawings, okay? Now, these come from your primary sources, they're photos that you've taken. This student kind of focused more so on portraiture than anything else. So you can see she's got her primary sources here, and then she does her own beautifully drawn, but like graphite pencil drawings from them. And this goes on for a couple of pages, just so that she's getting used to doing different expressions and drawing different people. And she really does utilise the whole primary and secondary sources that she's got. Then after that, she starts to look at experimentation and how she can develop and understand new materials that are not something that she's necessarily used to. So you can see in these circles here that it is just a picture of a nose and a mouth, but actually what she does is she uses different materials to kind of explore that, okay? And she does this from her primary sources again. Again, more primary sources. Now this student's starting to think about what they're going to do going forward for their final piece. On here, she's done some photo montage things, and she's looking at development and how she can develop from her primary sources so that they're not just replicas of the photograph itself. She's picked the images that she's wanting to look at, what she's going to develop for her final piece, and she starts playing with different materials to see which one works best for her. So she does some etching plates, she also does some more kind of acrylic, some lovely etching plates there, some more biro work. Again, just really exploring the expressions in her primary sources and also understanding what material would be best for her. We go through for more development. She has used filters and she's explained that. So if you're going to use Photoshop or any filters on your pictures to get the colours different, you know, it's a good idea to have that off and print out your contact sheet so that you can see exactly what it is that you're doing. So in this one here, it's biro drawings. This is the development of a final piece. So you can see here that it is a picture of a child and a grandfather, and they're two separate photos, and she's combined them together here to think about how she's going to do her design ideas in her final piece. And again, she's exploring whether she should use pencil or whether she should go in with acrylic. This develops the whole way through, and this is the final design. So she's used different things here. She's looked at Mark Powell's kind of influence here, and she's gone to the design that she's done. She's decided that she's going to do it in acrylic paint, which is why that little swatch of colour paint is there. And then she has an evaluation. This student also had a final piece, which was a big canvas that had this on, done with acrylic paint. So this is the final piece from the project that I've just shown you. And I think if you look, with that being an A-star project, you can really see how the development has come from start to finish. The student who did this project started off looking at portraiture, and it was very clear from the offset in her project that that's what she was going to look at. Then as she develops through, she uses a lot of her primary sources to create things. There's not a lot of secondary sources that she draws from actually in her project. Most of it is primary sources. Given the content, sometimes you can't do that and you will need to use secondary sources, but you do have to be careful where they come from. But in this instance, for this project, most of the things have come from primary sources, unless it's been on the artist research. And if you look through, you can see that the young child and the granddad, that is used the whole way through the project from the primary and secondary sources, almost looking at a contrast between young and old and kind of age before beauty and that kind of thing. And you can see that very clearly. The student examines, you know, observational drawing, and what she does in the end is she creates a final piece design idea by layering two primary sources together that she has taken, and then she then transforms that onto canvas and gives you this beautiful final piece, which is done with acrylic. It's an A1 canvas, and it is just really striking. But the most important thing about it is you can see where it started and where it ended, and this is a lovely conclusion of the project. So this is how you need to start thinking now. It needs to be a little bit more critical. It needs to be a little bit more kind of in the understanding of how you develop, and that you have to make sure that you're visually and written recording all of your thought processes and development, no matter how little, so that you can really have an impact with your visual language and then be able to create something like this. So things you should add to your project. Really, the first thing you need to do is to make sure that you're thinking about how to make the project personal. The example that I've just shown you was a very personal project. It was the student's family, photos that they've taken, and people that really meant something to that student. And because of that, you can see the whole way through kind of the love and affection, care that's gone through that. Sometimes it can be difficult if you choose something that you're detached from, like celebrities or something like that, because it makes it a lot harder for you to be able to create a connection with that and then visually represent that. So think about how to make it personal to you. Collect as many primary sources as you can. I cannot stress that enough. Any photographs that you've taken, it really helps to develop your own visual understanding and language within your projects. Developing your ideas and through personal and meaningful exploration. So what I mean by that is like using separate primary sources to create one drawing or painting, like what happened in that project. Yeah. So really thinking about how you can make a purposeful and meaningful exploration of your topic. And again, that goes back to making your project personal, because if it's personal, it will be a lot easier to do that. Sketch what you see around you. We've had some excellent examples in the past where students have been on a bus or on a metro or on any kind of public transport, or they've been sitting in a coffee shop and they have a little sketchbook with them with some pencils, and they're just really quick sketches of people that they see around them. This can really help you to understand not only the human figure, but also expressions and emotions and how people hold themselves. Especially for this project, that's a really good thing to do. So if you can do that, that'd be great. And then we can add that to your project as it goes on. You need to use a range of materials and processes throughout your projects, and these need to be documented visually and also in written form. And you do also need to think about your own strengths and what you feel you're more confident and stronger in terms of material. If you are, for instance, really confident with graphite and pencil, then I'd really like you to spend this time between now and September exploring different materials. And if you need those materials, please email me or Mr. Campbell and we can get that sorted for you. If you do go to any galleries or go on any trips that involve art anywhere, please just collect leaflets and flyers and things like that that relate to that, so that we can really, home in on the fact that you are living art. Yeah, you're spending your time exploring different places, and this really helps to kind of get you that exploration and obviously investigation part of it as well, because you're actually going out to find other things. You're not just solely relying on the internet. Finally then, what are we expecting you to do between now and the start of your course? So there is a document for you to be working through that was created for you to understand what you should be up to by the time you get in September. It is just to help you, to guide you to get a head start on the project. Okay, so you do have that document available. If you can't find it again, please email me or Mr. Campbell and we'll be able to sort that out for you. It would also be great to collect as many primary sources that you can. Primary sources are photographs that you've taken, just to make that clear. If you were going, to another city, or you're walking around where you're from and you see pictures of buildings and nature and things like that, take photographs of them. They might not be relevant now, but your next project is structures. So think about how you can take loads of photos and build up a bank of photographs that you've taken to kind of help you as you go. You've got quite a long time between now and September, so really think about how you can utilize that time wisely and make sure that you're setting yourself up for a really good head start with your A-level course. And lastly, if you need any help, please contact the art teachers. You can contact Mr. Campbell or you can contact me, Miss Sharman, and honestly we will try our best to help you any way we can, even if we aren't in school. If it's in the holidays and you need a hand, we will get back to you as soon as we can. Okay, but I think it's fabulous that you've chosen A-level art. We're really looking forward to seeing you in September, and we're really looking forward to see what kind of things you bring, and looking forward so much to seeing your work. Okay, thank you.